Hi everybody and welcome back to the 3XFIRE Garage. I know it's been a bit of a hiatus since I've made a movie, but in this episode I'm going to give you guys a little update on what's been going on. It's just been a crazy winter. I'll get into that when we get into the video, so stay tuned. Like I said in the intro, this winter's been crazy. I know I said I wanted to try to get a video out there at least once a month, a couple times a month. It just didn't happen. I give credit to those guys that can do it all the time and always have a camera in their hand. It's tough. I get it. I can't do it all the time. That, and I had some issues with GoPros. I had a couple older GoPros that I thought I could use this winter to do some filming, and none of them worked. They'd go outside as soon as you got them cold. They had like 3 minutes of life and they were dead. So getting any footage of anything that we did this winter was kind of tough, so I only have some bits and pieces that other people had filmed for me, and it's not that great. So sorry about that. Just wanted to apologize. Just is what it is. Like I said, when we get into it, I'll explain how this winter has been so far. We're going to start out with racing and things of that nature that I did this winter. Off the get-go, I did leave Woody's traction and control, and I went to Stud Boy. Just was a business decision, is what it is. Stud Boy's been phenomenal. I cannot thank them enough. They have went above and beyond anything that I've had in the past. And again, like I said, I just can't thank Stud Boy enough for coming on board this season and picking up the slack where Woody's left off. It was just great. Thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it. I look forward to working with you next season. On to the 640 build. That's been an entire nightmare, and I only have a small clip of it running. That was after we got it fired up and started heat cycles on it. I don't know, I maybe rode 20 miles on that motor, and on top of a couple heat cycles that I did on it to break it in. And I don't know, it was fun, but to be honest, it wasn't worth what I had put into that motor. I guess, I don't know, maybe somebody else might enjoy it better than I did, but personally, for that kind of effort and that kind of money that I put into that build, I expected more out of it. And it ain't clutching, it ain't gearing, it ain't any of that. I got it down to perfect. It's where it's supposed to be. It's right. It just, I don't expected more, I guess, out of it. I've rode 440s that seem to run mildly as good as that does. So if anybody wants to buy a mint 640 that's got like 200 miles on it, or 200 miles, 20 miles on it, get a hold of me, PM me, get a hold of me through Facebook, Instagram, something like that. It is for sale. I am going to sell it. It just, maybe somebody else could use it and get more enjoyment out of it than I did. To me, it just wasn't worth the headache that I put into it. So on to other things, I ended up, the other side of that coin is most places I tried to race the sled, pissed, bitched, and moaned about it being a 640. They either wanted to stick me in a 700 class or an 800 class or have me run some type of mod snowcross class, and it just wasn't what I wanted to do with the sled. I wasn't going to go out and run new Procross chassis sleds with the old ZR. I ended up doing that, and I'll get into that when I talk about what happened during the XC race, but it just wasn't what I wanted to do. So I ended up finding a bone cheap 98 ZR600 motor stock. Got it for $200. It wasn't pretty, but it ran supposedly. Well, we got it home, had a bird stator in it, so I junkyard specialed this motor, and I slapped in I think I paid $40 from the snowmobile farm out in Cass City. Stator, ran great. I put probably 200 miles or better on that motor and stator setup. Sled ran great. It was awesome. I had a lot of power, surprisingly. I ended up taking the D&D pipes off that I had for it, put a set of SLP ceramic coateds, which I could show some pictures of doing that. The SLP pipes were kind of a pain in the ass. They were supposed to fit ZR2, ZR3 chassis, and they did not fit ZR3 chassis at all. I imagine I find it hard to believe they were supposed to fit in a ZR2 chassis. The mounting locations to the chain case and things of that nature for the silencers and stuff, it didn't fit. And I don't think it would have even fit in a ZR2. Even with the hood on, the ZR2 is a lot narrower than the ZR3 as far as like where the windshield and headlight comes down. It was tight on a ZR3, so I imagine in a ZR2 it was just as tight, if not tighter, and burning holes in the hood. So I don't know, I got a hell of a deal on it. I did a little fab work. I can show you guys what I ended up doing a little bit on that and getting them fit. And actually, they fit really nice. And personally, I think they run better than the D&Ds did. They're a lot louder than I wanted. They were supposed to be trail pipes. They had dual silencers on each pipe, but they are definitely not as quiet as the D&Ds. But I do plan on repacking the larger bottom silencer of the pipes, and hopefully it'll get a little more under control. I don't know, I guess I'm getting old. I like a good sounding sled, but obnoxiously loud just doesn't do nothing for me anymore. On to XC racing it. I did end up getting to cross-country race the sled this year, just like I had planned to in the beginning. Ended up racing over in Rothbury, I don't know how you want to pronounce it, but for the West Michigan Snowcross, I did go out there and do their XC race they had this year, and man, that was a blast. All around was a blast. Whooped the hell out of me, but man, I had a good time out there. The sled ran great the first heat and whatnot. Actually ran really well. It pulled off the line and beat a bunch of other sleds that weren't in my class, so that was pretty cool. A bunch of newer 600 snowcross sleds and stuff like that. So that was pretty cool, and it actually held its own quite a ways through the first lap, but after we got into the real whooped out section, and the tighter sections weren't as bad, but the whooped out sections, I just couldn't stay with them guys. I was all over hell and back going like this, and they just went through them just like butter. So I didn't really have nothing for them, but we were in the flat sections and like the long snowcross style berms and stuff. They couldn't touch the old ZR chassis, which kind of surprised me, to be honest. I didn't really think it would run that well compared to the newer ones. And here's a couple little clips that I have from that event. Like I said, without GoPros this year, it was really tough. I am planning on in the future to buy a good new GoPro, hopefully figure out a way to keep them warm, because I do know I got a couple friends with them that keep shutting off when it gets cold, or you only get like 10-15 minutes. So I'm going to try to look into that a little bit more this year. But here's a couple clips that I do have from the XC race from a couple friends of mine.
Get him! He's so happy. He's in first place.
Yeah. Shooting grin.
Yeah.
Who's to say I'm not even part of this class? They're not.
What the hell? I'm gonna take this long way. Get.
Now the second heat or moto or whatever they want to call it out there, that didn't go so hot. I think about halfway through the first lap, I started hearing some weird sounds and some weird backfires the sled didn't have. And like I said, mind you, I had about 200 miles or better on the sled before we went. So I kind of had an idea what sounds were normal and what sounds weren't normal on it. And it started just entering the corner and stuff, and it started sounding real weird. Then this lap 2, it started really acting up. And by lap 3, it was just shit. I ended up frying the junkyard stator in it, and it would rev like, I don't know, 4 or 5, or a little higher than that, like 6,000-7,000 RPMs, and struggle to get there. And then every once in a while, it'd open up wide open and take off again. And then you'd come into a corner and it would struggle again. So I'm guessing I got to get it in here and reohm the stator. But judging by everything that had happened, I'm guessing it fried the high side of the stator like it did on the last stator when I bought the motor. So that was kind of a kick in the dick, but I ended up just running it. It was either going to blow up and leave me stranded in the woods or get it across the finish line. At that point, I didn't even care. I was so tired of that project, honestly. So it ended up making it. I ran 4 laps, both motos, within a half hour. It was, I think in total I rode it for the entire hour was like 58 or 59 miles in total. And shit, rode like 14 miles with the stator fried out straight on the handlebar. So it made it home. I can't complain. This chassis and everything in the sled was great. Like I said, as far as the ZR3 goes, it was one of the best riding ZR3s that I have put together myself and rode. It really did ride really well. So I'm pretty impressed with that. But I ended up, after that whole experience, really changed my outlook on what I wanted to do in the future. So a little bit later in the video, I'll kind of show you. I kind of decided just dive in feet first and go with something different. But I am going to keep the 600 around. I do plan on doing a little more. I'm going to stick a stator in it, maybe do some little bit of odds and ends to it, but I think I'm going to just keep it as a stock 600 with the twin pipes on it. I might mill ahead a little bit, do some little bit of port work inside, but I'm not going back and dealing with the 640. That 600, honestly, other than the throttle, like the 640 was a little more snappier just because of all the port work and stuff like that inside of it. It was a little more crisp than the 600, but in the long run, as far as power goes, the little bit of a difference that it made, the 640 versus the stock 600 on twin pipes, it ain't worth the headache of trying to deal with the 640, to be completely honest. That 600 ran just as good as the 640 did, as far as I could tell. I mean, like I said, there's nothing wrong with the 640. It was a great motor. They did great work assembling it. It's held together. It's a good motor. It just, if that's what you like, then great. Me personally, I like to race. I don't want to sit there and have to dick with it all the time at the track and constantly jet and all this and that, where the stock 600 on the twin pipes, the jetting's close. You can run it in 40-degree weather. You can run it in 0-degree weather, and it's close enough. It ain't going to fry. Yeah, I'm not lean on the edge when it's warm out. I get that, understand that, but I want something that's going to have some longevity, especially if I plan on using this sled as a backup sled, or even doing some vintage snowcross or classic snowcross, whatever you want to call it. But that's the game plan as far as the 600. Like I said, if you're interested in the 640, get a hold of me. We'll work some kind of deal out, but I would like to see that disappear and use the funds for another project. And that's part of it too, is I got a lot of funds wrapped up into that motor that I kind of wish I would have spent elsewhere at this point and did something different. But it is what it is, I guess. So that is the highlights basically of the 600, 640, Snow Pro, whatever the hell you want to call that sled, and the one cross-country race I did get to go. They're saying they might run one end of the month, April, but it's crap. We were up north this past weekend riding, and I don't see them getting anything off in Lower Peninsula or Lower Michigan. Lower Peninsula, there's no snow left. I mean, yeah, if you want to hide in the trees on the west side in the shade, then sure, but everything on the east side's all melted off, it seems like. So yeah, I kind of put a dampener on the winter pretty fast. On to oval racing. It was just kind of a weird year for me, to be honest, with all the COVID and all of that going on and everybody changing their dates and jumping back and forth, and they want you to pay full price, but we're not going to run a full series and all that. I just, whatever. That's kind of my thoughts on the whole oval thing. I did end up racing twice this year. I ran in Gladwin both times. I ended up running improved and pro IFS class there. I ended up second all 4 times that I raced out there. The first race out there, we had some issues. The sled still needs some help with handling. We're getting closer. A lot of it is the guy that told me the setup to start with was a lot lighter than me, so I think we've been fighting a lot of that. I mean, a lot lighter than me. So I think that's part of the issue we've been fighting is the front end was just extremely soft for 235 pounds, 230. And the guy that rode it before me was like 160, 170. So we did put the new front end in it. And honestly, we went back out there again for the second race and things were much better, but still not 100%. There was a couple bugs that I ended up shoving the sled in the bales pretty good out of turn 4. Last corner, we were racing for it, and it was a rough season out there. I ended up rolling it over in the improved class. It looped out. I had my setup a little bit wrong, and the ass end was super loose. So I ended up looping out and ended up on my back coming out turn 4 again. So we went back, and I only had like three classes between my improved and my pro class. So I went back and softened the rear skid up in hopes that we could get it to hook a little better. And we went back out there and raced the same guy again. It was just kind of an off weekend. Not many people showed up. It was what it was. But went back out there and ended up having a hell of a race with him. Sean Nestor, I believe that's how he says his last name, on his Motoski 340 Snow Pro. That was a hell of a battle. We duked her out for 4 laps, I think is what it was. And I kind of made a series of events happen. And I come into 1 and 2. I come into 1 a little hotter and took a weird line. And it kind of set me up weird for 3 and 4, which kind of allowed him to get under me. And so I figured, well, checkers are coming. This is my last shot. So I gave her all she had. And she ended up pushing out pretty bad on me. And I didn't think I was that close to the bank, but apparently I was, and it sucked me right off into the bank, and that was all she wrote there. I ended up Ricky Bobby in it and walked across the finish line, so that was kind of a first for me, and that was kind of cool. And honestly, it sucked that that's how it went down, but in the long run, it really made it for a great race. Me and Sean both had an awesome time out there, and it was great, and it got me some good publicity, and so, I mean, it wasn't a complete wash, and the sled, I cracked the windshield and dented the ski up a little bit, but he'll live to fight another day. As far as that was pretty much the big highlights of it. I can drop the video of that race. It ain't the best angle, but we do have a good video of that race, the final race where I stuffed her into the bales. And it was, like I said, it was a fun race. We fought back and forth, and we both were trying different lines, and it was all around probably one of the better races I've had in a long time, just fun-wise. I mean, yeah, there wasn't 100 people in there. It was just mano-y-mano, me versus another guy, and it was a lot of fun, honestly. We duked it out, and I came up short on this time. What can I say? So like I said, it is what it is. You be the judge. We gave her hell out there, and I mean, I left her all out on the ice. There was nothing left to give out of the sled. And we ended up figuring out a few things from that incident that I think going into next season will help. I am a little more excited for next season. As much as I wanted to go run Myra, I don't know what's going to happen with that. I had a couple friends that ran Sportsman there this season, and there were some things that had happened out there that I'm not going to get into a lot of details, but they really need to start addressing. Especially, I know of 2 more Sportsman sleds that are getting built for Myra right now, and the class is growing. The class is getting big. I'll give it that. but they really need to start cracking down on some tech things around there. They're letting some stuff slide that I'm not going to go race there until they get it figured out. Sorry. This classes, there's a reason why there's rules. It's 2000 and older for a reason. When you got an XP chassis rev out there running in the sportsman's class, come on, guys, get your shit together. But I'm going to leave that there. So next season going out, I do plan on doing a little more ice racing than this season. Hopefully by then COVID will be kind of under control, and it'll be a little bit better of a season going into the season than it was this year. So I'm looking forward to that. Like I said, we did get to sled a lot closer this season than we had last year, and this is only the second season, and I think maybe the 6th or 8th race on the sled. So, I mean, it's still fairly new sled, and we're still working some bugs out of it. As far as getting it out on the practice track, we had a bunch of problems with one of the practice tracks that we normally run at. The DNR is making a big shit deal out there, and so we really didn't have much to practice unless you want to travel all over hell and back. And like I said, with the way the season was this year, I just, it is what it was at this point. But going into next season, I am excited. We do got some bugs worked out of it. It is going in the right direction. I do know I have a couple things I want to do over the summer to it, but we're pretty much set for next season to have a pretty good season. So like I said, hopefully a couple things that I talked about early in this video will get addressed and we can move forward. And hopefully next year I can get some time and get out on the Myra circuit would be great. Now back to what I was talking about earlier. I kind of dove in feet first and decided that I was going to buy a new sled. Oops, I guess I do like old sleds, and I will continue to build old sleds and stuff like that, but it was time to get something newer, and my back ain't 20 years old anymore, so the old ZR really kind of made me realize that it was time to figure out something newer than what I had. So I ended up going and buying a 2010 Snow Pro 600 SX. It was Taylor, and now you got to work with me because I can't say his last name, and I'm sure I'm going to massacre it, but it was Taylor Mewisen, something like that. It was his old sled. I ended up vinning it, finding it out that he was the original purchaser of it. He, from what I've gathered, has or was on the race team for Cat during the national tour or whatever you want to call it during the time the sled was out. So I'm assuming it was one of his old race sleds or backup sleds. I did reach out to him to try to get in touch with him. I haven't heard anything back, so maybe if somebody sees this and knows him, have him get a hold of me. I kind of would like to ask a few questions about the sled. The sled is a mod sled. It has mod road all over, a bunch of parts on it. I did pull the Y pipe and everything all off, and there's quite a bit of extensive port work, it looks like, inside. So I'm assuming it still does have the original mod 600 motor in it, but it is also back on a single pipe with the, I don't know, stupid Speedworks can or something crap like that. But I ended up buying the sled. Got a pretty decent deal on it. To be honest, I could have paid a little less for it. The more I dig in, the more I find that was kind of cobbled together. And so I bought the sled 2 weeks ago. I spent a week thrashing, get it together. I bought it with a broke jack shaft. They decided to cut the jack shaft off because they couldn't get the bearing off, because apparently on this generation Twin Spar Snow Pro, this is a pretty common thing. Jack shafts are shit, and finding a jack shaft is impossible. So I ended up getting in touch with Louis Peterson. I think that's how it's said. Louis Peterson. He had a bunch of shafts made. He claimed they were for 2011 and newer, but he said they might work in the old ones. And I'm like, well, I don't have any other options. I was going to have a friend of mine machine it, the one that's done a bunch of other machine works, as you've seen on the page or on the channel so far. And my buddy's like, man, it's going to take me a lot of time to do this, the tooling, setup, and stuff to cut the splines. And he's like, you ain't going to be able to ride it before summer hits. And I'm like, well, that ain't going to do me any good. So I ended up getting one from Louis, and we got it here. And he was great to work with. Louis was a great guy. If you ever need any jack shaft, look up Louis Peterson. He's out of New York from on Facebook. He's in the 08 through 11 Snow Pro page, and I think he's on the arcticcat Snow Pro page. But he was great to work with. He's like, I'll send you a shaft. If it doesn't work, just send it back. No big deal. Just don't jack it all up, but I'll take it back and give you your money back, and it is what it is. So we ended up getting it sent here. And like I said, I want to get a hold of that Taylor to see what was done with this sled and what's been done since he's got rid of it, because there's a lot of weird stuff in this sled that I'm not sure what's going on, because the jack shaft that I got is supposedly supposed to fit 15 wide gears, but some 2010s from what I found had 15 wide gears, which mine was one of them. So surprisingly, we got the shaft here and everything bolted right in, and the machine work was phenomenal on it. We had to do a little dressing on the splines because they were a little sharp and the gears were a little snug to get on, but we just ran a little round rat file just to knock that sharp edge off, and everything fit like a glove. It was nice. It was a nice piece, and it was a little cheaper than if you could get one through Cat, because I think Cat was like $4.95 for a friggin' jack shaft, and his was I think $3.47 shipped. So it was what it was, but I ended up putting like 70 miles on it last weekend, just trying to get some bugs worked out of it and some seat time on it, and it is completely a different animal as far as riding the old ZRs and stuff, which I do have a Crossfire, and I did spend like 9,000 miles riding that Crossfire, so it wasn't like a whole big change for me, but it definitely was a little bit different. And as far as like that whole debacle of FireCat M Series being rider forward versus actually rider forward and all that shit that people complain about, to be completely honest, my Crossfire, as far as where I sit and everything, versus this Twin Spar Snow Pro, kind of all seemed the same to me. I mean, I really didn't notice this drastic difference of where my body placement is on either or sleds. You know, from what I remember riding the Crossfire in this, it was kind of like riding an old bike. You don't forget how to ride it. It took me, I don't know, 3 laps around the cabin, and I'm like, okay, I can ride this. It's like riding my old sled. So I'm pretty happy with the sled. It is going to need some other work to it. It's half-assed trail converted. The guy I bought it from didn't have a clue. The guy that owned it before him was completely fucking retarded and didn't know anything about the sled. Claims to be a used snowmobile salesman, but come on now, this thing was kind of hit. Hadn't been ran in a long time. They claimed that it had been rode 2 weeks ago, but everything in the primary clutch was rusted right to hell, and I mean scale on it. The weights, the slide shaft, everything, even around where the belt goes on the center shaft of the outer sheave, had rust on it, and I'm like, dude, I know better. This sled hasn't been moved in quite a while, at least a handful of months. The only thing that it did have is it did have a current trail sticker on it, but either they hauled it in salt and let it sit for a month or two, or something had happened. Either way, the sled, it needed new weight bushings, it needed a new weight, it needed a new pin, it needed the shocks. Like, there was a whole bunch of shit we went through when I was there, and the guy that I bought it from didn't know anything about it, and the original owner tried to play it off as there was nothing wrong with it. Well, if you work on these sleds or spend any time around sleds, the basic maintenance shit is easy to look at when you go look at a sled. And if clearly that's, damaged or broken or worn out, it's pretty obvious to see. There is no real, sure, you could ride it like that. Like the guy's big bitch was, well, I rode it and didn't have no problems. Well, sure, you can ride the damn thing with the weights cut into the spider. Who gives a shit if you don't know any better? So that was a whole fiasco. But we finally got it home, got it all tore apart, seen what we were working with. As far as the sled goes, it's a clean base. And honestly, it was one of the first I seen that didn't have cracked all the hell plastics until I rode it. And I apparently stuffed it in a gopher hole and cracked the hell out of the side panel, because that's what I do good, is wreck shit, I guess. So it is overall, though, a pretty clean sled, pretty straight. So I'm pretty excited about getting that together, and I'll do some stuff on the channel with it and stuff. I plan on using that as my new, like, actual rider. If I'm going to ride around here, I'm still going to ride my old ZR, but if I'm going to go and put 100 miles on in a day, I'm not riding the ZR chassis anymore. Sorry. I guess call me a sellout, a puss, whatever. I'm not doing it. I'm 6'5", 230 pounds. I got a back that ain't the best in the world from racing and getting hurt. I ain't worried about it. I'm going to ride something newer. So I'm pretty excited about that. I do want to take and finish the trail conversion on it. I ended up running it on 50/50 mix 110 last weekend, just because the needles that were in it were still the Snowcross needles. It had 380 jets in it, which from what I'm gathering by the jet chart means that it was still set up to run on 110, even though they had the timing turned back to 0, but it still was set up to run on a 50/50 blend. It still had 2.0 slide cuts in it, but yeah, the sled has a speedo kit on it with no tack or gauge, but it still has all the wiring and stuff and a hood wire kit on it. And like I said, it's like half-assed trail converted. So I do want to at least put the XC needles in it and the 2.5 slide cuts just to kind of help it out a little bit. It did kind of load up a little bit, and to be honest, it wasn't real happy through the mid-range. Like as far as trail riding, I do want to fatten up the mid-range on it. But honestly, I think I'm going to probably keep the 380 mains in it and maybe run it on the 50-50 mix for a while. It's hard to say, but I want to at least be able to ride down the trail at half throttle and not worrying about it melting down. So we're going to do that. I am going to have Mike Carver do the shocks. I believe that's the right name, Carver Performance there. I'm going to have him do the shocks front and rear, set them up to the XC specs. I plan on snow crossing it. I do want to cross country race it this coming season, and I do want to be able to trail ride it some. So that's kind of the plan for. As far as plans moving forward from here, I haven't forgot about the old mutton cat. The old mutton cat is just been eating at me. Like I said, with this winter being drug out and all the shit that's happened this winter, I just really haven't had the time. I didn't have time to deal with getting another GoPro, let alone dealing with trying to get the little bit of parts. And I honestly don't need much. I need to get drivers for it and front A-arms and shocks. That's pretty much all that is left to get for it. I have everything else to put it together. It just, the 600 sled, the old ZR, it drained me. Every week it was something else, something here, something there, just to get it all, get the swap where it was rideable and you could trust the thing to ride it somewhere. So I really didn't have a lot of extra time or funds for that matter to deal with that sled. That's kind of another reason why I would like to see the 640 disappear, is because I'd like to be able to take funds from that and finish up the Mountain Cat build and maybe build something for that. I don't know, but just it's a lot of money tied up that I'm not using at this point. But I do plan on getting on that project soon. I do plan on getting back into making videos a little more regularly. Like I said, it's just been, I haven't been home a single weekend since like the first week of January. I've been riding in Cadillac, riding in Ross Lake, riding in Vanderbilt, riding in Trout Lake, Halbert. I've been racing in Gladwin. I've been riding the Bay. I just haven't had time to really do that. I'm just kind of enjoying the winter that we've had. It's been a long time since I've actually put trail miles on. In this winter, I think I got close to 300 miles, which I don't jump on me. I know it ain't a lot, but for me, I haven't did that in 10 years, let alone in 1 year. And I used to ride close to 1,000, 1,500 miles a year pretty easily, but it just time, and just don't have time to do it anymore, especially with racing and stuff. With this winter, I had a little extra time to do things like that, so I took advantage of it. And yeah, the channel kind of hurt from it, but I hope you guys will understand. So with all that said and long-winded ass message, that's where we're at here. I'm glad you guys are still kind of hanging out and watching the videos. I'm still getting views and subscribers, which is awesome. Guys, keep doing that if you watch this. I know this is going to be a little bit of a long-winded video, and most of you probably won't even make it to this point, but thanks again for watching the video and supporting the channel. I really appreciate it. I look forward to probably doing another video on the Mountain Cat here pretty soon. I do want to put a stator in the 600. I might show you guys a quick stator video on doing that. I don't know. There's a bunch of them on YouTube already, so I don't know if I'm going to do that or not, but we're going to start working on some sleds now in the garage. And the other side of it is I had a bunch of customer sleds in here this year, which I haven't had in quite a while. I kind of quit doing that, but this winter, like I said, I did have some extra time, so I picked up, I don't know, 6 or 7 different sled projects for other people that I did this winter. So that kind of also hurt being in here. And like I said, my garage ain't that big, so you jam somebody else's sled in here with 3 of your other sleds, and you don't really want to work on anything. You want to get that one, get the hell out of here and get paid and move on to the next one. So that kind of hurt it. But just like I said, thanks a lot, guys. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care.